Today, I want to talk with you about a hidden struggle that I believe many INFJs have. Hey everybody, Sam here, editing Sam here from the future. After I filmed this video, I sadly discovered that my focus was out of focus. And honestly, I'm a busy mum. I don't have time to record this again. I feel like there's a lot of valuable information in this, so we're going to keep it. And I'm hoping that you will just be able to ignore that it's out of focus and just be able to have a listening experience like it's a podcast. I would really appreciate that if you didn't click away and watched it despite the blurriness. Thank you. And if you're an INFJ, maybe you don't feel this way all of the time, but I bet you that every now and then this struggle comes up in your life. I certainly know that for me, this hidden struggle it's not always there, it's not always on the surface, but when something happens that triggers me, it rears its ugly head. So today, I'm going to share with you a little story about what's happened for me and how this struggle came about. And of course, don't worry, I'm going to share what the struggle is. And we are going to discuss why INFJs might struggle with this. As always, I want to hear from you. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments because it's going to look different for every INFJ because, yeah, we're INFJs, but we're also individuals. And I'm also going to share some ideas on how you could overcome this struggle, including what I've personally done this week, which has really helped me. Hello everybody, if you're new here, I'm Sam and I'm an Australian-based online counsellor for INFJs, for introverts, for empaths, gentle souls, neurodivergent people. And on this channel, we talk about all of those things. So if that sounds like something that you would be interested in, I would be so grateful if you could please subscribe to my channel. What has happened for me in this past week, or even the past couple of weeks, to be honest? I have found that on my YouTube channel, I've had a few videos that have been performing really well. Now, when a YouTube video goes well, I find what happens is I get more traffic to my website, people are checking out more of my services and what I have to offer. And with that comes the natural thing of people booking in to have a counseling session with me, which I'm incredibly grateful for. I'm always so grateful when I have new clients that come to me, that find me, and I think you're all amazing. So please, if you do want counseling, book a session in with me. I also find that when I start getting traction on YouTube videos or on my Instagram account, I begin being seen by other companies and organizations, and I was nominated for an award this week, which was just really exciting. And I have more people reaching out for sponsorships and wanting to give me product or whatever. So this is all obviously like really exciting stuff, and I'm not complaining that this has happened, like not at all. But what I find happens as I reach a new milestone in my business, my foundations begin to feel a little bit wobbly. I start to feel a little bit like unstable and wondering when the shoe is going to drop. Yesterday, I received 2 comments. And you know what? They weren't bad comments, but it triggered in me this hidden struggle that INFJs can have. The first comment I got, which if you're the person who wrote this comment, like I honestly, like totally fine, you wrote it in a really beautiful way and it wasn't even a bad comment. It was simply asking me what my qualifications are. And you know what? I think, like, I applaud people to investigate those that you see on the internet before you book sessions with people, to find out what their qualifications and experience are, and to trust your gut about people, and to just make sure that before you I provided a service with someone that they're the real deal. But it triggered this feeling of imposter syndrome. Crazy, I know, because I mean, I am a qualified counsellor and I am a registered Australian counsellor, but it made me start feeling like, oh no, am I qualified enough? Am I enough? Can I be doing this? Am I allowed to provide therapy for people? And I know that in America, the qualifications and standards to be a counsellor there's way more years of study compared to an Australian, but I have that so clearly on my description of my videos and also on my website on what my qualifications and registrar counselling registration is, and my experience and my previous experience before I was a counsellor as a youth worker and community services worker. So I've always worked with humans since forever. And then on the same day that I got that comment, which again, let me just reiterate that that comment was completely acceptable and I encourage those type of comments. I then had somebody comment on a really old video of mine, like really old. I didn't rewatch the video, but basically this person wrote this super long comment telling me that I was an idiot and that I don't know what I'm talking about. And maybe in this particular topic, like maybe they're right. I don't know. I've grown as a human. My ideas change. I am forever evolving. And I'm okay with not being correct, and I'm okay in being corrected. And this person actually wasn't even that, it sounds rude, but the way they wrote it, it wasn't rude, and I thanked them for that comment. But again, it triggered that feeling of imposter syndrome. Now, I'm gonna share with you why I believe that it triggered imposter syndrome in me. And I'm also going to share how I overcame this. But first, let's discuss together why INFJs might struggle with imposter syndrome. Please let me know in the comments if you've struggled with imposter syndrome, why you think you've struggled with it, and how you have overcome it. Because I feel like the more we share with each other, the more we can learn and the more we can grow together. Here are just some of the reasons why I believe INFJs might struggle with imposter syndrome. The first one is having high standards. INFJs often set the bar so high for themselves, so they can feel like they're never quite measuring up, even if they're doing a great job. So with my story, in my case, I have been sitting on the fence for quite a while about doing my master's in psychotherapy and doing my postgraduate. And one of the reasons is because I know that I have a large US-based audience, and to be a practicing therapist in America, you do need that postgrad. However, you don't need that in Australia, but then I feel like I want to be the best therapist that I can be. I want to have all of the knowledge, and I've set a really high standard for myself that I want to meet. Yet, because of my current life situation of having young children with me, it's like, oh, I don't know if I've got the capacity to do a postgrad. And then when I had that comment about my qualifications, it just triggered that part of me where I was like, oh my God, I still haven't signed up to do my Masters of Psychotherapy, and it's been on my to-do list forever. A second reason INFJs might struggle with imposter syndrome is perfectionism. We tend to want everything to be perfect. And even just a small mistake can make us feel like we're faking it. Now, I'm the first to admit, I'm a human. And all humans make mistakes. And I know that sometimes when I'm doing therapy sessions with people, I'm aware that at times I can say the wrong thing, I might remember the wrong thing, or I'm just like missing the mark. And when I feel like I don't have that perfect session where I'm the perfect therapist, it can be easy to fall into the trap of feeling like an imposter because you're not living up to that perfectionism. The third reason INFJs might struggle with imposter syndrome is self-reflection. We spend a lot of time thinking about ourselves and our inner world and how we relate to the world. And so we can begin to overthink our abilities, and then we can begin to wonder if we're actually as good as we think we are, or even deserving to be doing what we're doing. And being on YouTube, like, that's hard when, as your audience grows and you get more comments and you start thinking, well, I know for me, I start thinking, oh my gosh, there's other INFJs out there who know more about the INFJ personality than I do. So who am I to talk about INFJs when there's other people that could do a better job? And then that's when imposter syndrome can set in. Yet at the end of the day, I don't necessarily need anybody's permission to film videos about INFJs. And I also know that I try to make it very clear to you that you are the expert of yourself and I'm not the expert of you. INFJs might struggle with imposter syndrome because we can be more sensitive to criticism. We tend to care about how other people may see us. And even the smallest of criticism can feel like a huge blow to our confidence. And so in the examples I shared with the comments I got, the one about the qualification, I know that the person who wrote that, and if you're watching, I know you didn't mean that as a criticism at all. Yet the imposter syndrome part in me felt like, oh, am I being criticized as a therapist? And are people thinking that I shouldn't be counseling? Should I not be doing therapy? And with the other comment, I've actually feel like I've been growing thicker skin and I'm receiving those comments more like, like that's fine, whatever. So to me, that's growth. But yeah, let me know, do you feel like you have a sensitivity to criticism? And this is just a question, this is not a fact. But I do know that people who are neurodivergent, and remember, I'm not saying INFJs are neurodivergent, but we've had the discussion before about if INFJs, maybe they're neurodivergent. But neurodivergent people, not everybody, but some people can have a thing called rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And I feel like that criticism can perhaps trigger that rejection sensitivity. Sometimes in our little brains, we can start thinking that criticism equals rejection, which is definitely not the case. And we need to remind ourselves that it's okay for people to be critical of us. It's okay to receive criticism because criticism is what is going to push us and motivate us to be better and to also grow as a person. INFJs might struggle with imposter syndrome because they feel like an outsider. INFJs, you, me, we, most of the time feel like we don't quite fit in. And then that can cause us to doubt ourselves and wondering if we really deserve success. So the award that I was nominated for was, I think it's called the Australian Business Enterprise 2025 Award. And when I received this nomination, I was like, what? Me? Why? Like, there are so many better businesses out there. Like, why me? INFJs might struggle with imposter syndrome because of the fear of vulnerability. What I mean by this is we don't always share our doubts. And I mean, this is a big thing for me to even be sharing my little story with you because it's putting myself in a position of vulnerability and sharing with you my own struggle with self-doubt in business. So when we don't share our insecurities and share how we're doubting ourselves, it can then feel like we're hiding or like we're pretending to be confident when deep down we're not. And so, like, for example, with putting things on YouTube, I sometimes wonder like how many content creators are actually like faking confidence because they have that imposter syndrome deep down. INFJs might struggle with imposter syndrome because of their desire to help others. Us INFJs, we're driven to make a difference. And when we don't feel like we're doing enough, we then worry that we're not good enough to help. I know that when I worked in the homelessness community, my first job in the area of homelessness, I was probably 21, 22, like early 20s. And I felt like the biggest fraud. I felt so fake. I felt like the biggest imposter because I was working with these older men, trying to help them in crisis and be a listening ear and support them. And all I could think was, who am I? Like, I'm not helping them. I'm not getting them off the streets. I'm not finding them a home. Well, some of them I found a home, but I was like, who am I? I'm such an imposter. I come from a middle-class family. What would I know about their situation? I'm so young. They're double my age. I'm not helping them. I'm not good enough to help them. INFJs might struggle with imposter syndrome because of their inner versus outer self. So the difference between their deep inner world and the way they come across to others in the external world can then make them feel misunderstood or like they're not being real. This took me a long time to overcome this because when I was younger, my inner world was so deep and so rich and very deep thinking and deep thoughts and feelings, but my exterior was very hyperactive and being a bit of a clown, and I just was not taken seriously. And so when I would finally have the courage to share some of my deeper thoughts with others, I did feel misunderstood, and I also felt like a fake or like an imposter because they never really saw that side of me. INFJs might struggle with imposter syndrome because of their empathy for others. We can be so focused on other people's needs that we might then downplay our own achievements or feel like we don't deserve recognition. I guess in my personal example, when I begin to see more success in my business and my online business, it's like, what? Like I said with the award, it's like, what? But this person is doing like really amazing things and achieving so much. Like, I'm fake. I'm not fake, by the way. You really do see the authentic me, or an authentic version of me. You don't see all of me. Like, I have to keep some stuff like secret and close to my heart. INFJs might struggle with imposter syndrome because of having such big dreams. With all of our big ideas, if things don't go perfectly or we don't get results right away, we can then feel like we're not living up to our own expectations. And let me tell you guys, this business that I've been creating has been a big dream of mine for well over a decade, and I've been working my butt off, and I still get imposter syndrome with it. Not all of the time, but I mean, this week I did. Although I hadn't felt imposter syndrome in quite a while, so I feel like it gets less and less the more you work on yourself. Basically, INFJs tend to be hard on themselves and overthink a lot of things, which then makes it easier for imposter syndrome to creep in. What did I do this week to overcome imposter syndrome? What could you do to help yourself overcome imposter syndrome? Again, I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, share your comments, share your strategies that have personally helped you overcome imposter syndrome. But for me this week, I did a thing called parts work therapy. I used a technique called internal family systems, which is what I use with many of my clients in a counseling session. And so I recognized that there was a part of me, and I called her imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome part became triggered and wanted to get into my driver's seat. She wanted to be in control. She wanted to like chat about, you're such a fraud. You're not a real therapist because you don't have your master's in psychotherapy yet, even though I'm qualified and a registered counsellor in Australia. But instead of pushing this imposter syndrome part away, so instead of rejecting her and trying to just not listen to her and just push her away, I chose to sit down with her and have a little discussion. And I chose to accept her, and I chose to meet her with self-compassion. And I asked this imposter syndrome, who are you? Like, what are you trying to help me with? What's going on here? And that's when it came up about the how all I really want to do is be a really good counselor. I want to be the best therapist that I can be. I want to provide the best therapy service that I can to my clients. And so this imposter syndrome got triggered because she's like, come on, Sam, do more, be better, be the best therapist you can be. But sometimes what can feel like it should be motivating and encouraging can then paralyze us and cause anxiety. And this imposter syndrome in my body very much felt like anxiety. I also felt like the imposter syndrome was wanting to encourage me to sign up for the Masters in Psychotherapy that I've been reading about every day for a good couple of years now, that I've kept putting off. And she got triggered because she's like, come on, Sam, just do the course. You're ready to do the course. I found that when I allowed space for her to talk and I came to her with self-compassion and self-acceptance rather than rejecting and pushing her away, that she was able to relax and let go of the reins, and it allowed that anxiety to settle down, and it allowed me to see things from a higher perspective. So for example, to recognize that the person who left that comment, it wasn't a bad comment. It just triggered something in me that had nothing to do with that person and the comment. And so I would encourage you that when you have imposter syndrome, to sit down with yourself and to become curious. Become curious about what is being triggered in you and why is that triggering for you? What words were said to you or what actions were taken that triggered that imposter syndrome, that triggered that anxiety, that pressure to be perfect, to be the best, to do the best. I find that journaling and writing down your thoughts and feelings can be really valuable. Or even talking to someone like myself, to a counselor or whoever's in your life, can help to unravel some of what's going on so you can begin to understand yourself more. And also just exploring and recognizing what old wounds are being triggered. What's happened in your past that triggered that response. I would also encourage you to be more open and willing to accept criticism. To not take it personally, but to see it as a good thing. And then just soothe your wounds. So if you've been criticized about something and it's hurt a wound, to see what that wound is and then just soothe it, use self-soothing techniques and begin to help regulate your nervous system.